Our commitment to Israel is clear and must be clear. This gallant democracy, this nation of survivors of history's example of man's capacity for senseless cruelty to his fellow man, cannot be allowed to succumb to the threats and assaults of our neighbors. And while this period of danger continues, until a lasting peace settlement is achieved, we must maintain our vigilance on her behalf. Still, we can recognize the deep needs of development for the entire Near East, that all the desert should bloom as Israel has shown that it can, that only progress toward a decent life for a Muslim or for a Jew, for the Egyptian or for the Israeli alike, can turn people away from war and hatred and toward the pursuit of peace. As Pope Paul said in his great encyclical, the new name for peace is development.
Good morning. How are you?
Senator Kennedy, what do you think the United Nations can do now to bring a peace in the Middle East?
Well, I think that the efforts to bring about a ceasefire, of course, are extremely important. Then we're going to have to find not just armistice, which we've had over the period of the last several decades, but a permanent peace settlement, which means a recognition of Israel as a country, recognition of her borders, and the recognition of the right of Israel to live and its people to survive and prosper. And also, I think, an overall plan and program for the economic growth of all of the nations of the Middle East, together, the Arab nations, together with Israel. I think this is going to require a great deal of delicacy and commitment to making progress, an abandoning of the animosities and the hatreds that have existed in the past as much as is humanly possible.
Do you see in the events in the debate of the last 2 days? Do you see in the debate of the last 2 days any new ominous signs in Soviet behavior at the UN?
Well, I don't think that the Soviet Union wishes us well, and I don't think that system wishes us well. But we are all on this planet together, and we all breathe the same air, and we're all facing the same kind of problems. We're drawing closer and closer together, and so there has to be an effort by the United States to work with the Soviet Union.
I'm talking specifically, Senator, of the apparent change in their attitude since the first ceasefire resolution was put forth at the UN. They've taken seemingly a much harder, more persistent line.
I would say that we'd make a mistake if we think that the problems are over or finished or completed because of the Israeli military victories. We're still going to face immense problems.
If there's a call for a peacekeeping force, would you expect the Russians to go along with it, sir?
No, I think that it's just too early to tell.
What
Do you
kind
think
of
a peacekeeping force might be necessary?
I think that's possible, but I don't think that anything that I can say at the moment is going to be very helpful.
Are you aware of any specific moves that the administration might be involved in now?
I think that any comments on that really should come from them.
On another subject, Senator, you called for a New York State FBI with an attorney general who is appointed as opposed to be elected. Senator Javits seems to take difference with that.
been recommended by the faculty to the trustees of the university for their degree. I ask that the degree of Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Science in Reverend Father President, faculty, and the trustees of the university for their degrees.
In 1,000 ways, by our strength and by our science and our goods, we have shown them that a better life is possible. But we have not done enough to make it a reality. We live in a country where people diet, but most of the world starves. We buy 8 million new cars every year, but most of the world goes without shoes. You are the healthiest generation of Americans in history, and you can expect to live even longer than the biblical 70. But half the people that were buried in Latin America last year were under the age of 4. We and the other developed nations of the world spend more than $100 billion on armaments, while the poor countries cannot obtain the $10 or $15 billion of investment capital that they need just to keep pace with their expanding population. And therefore, this revolution is directed against us, against the successful, against the rich, and against the mighty, against the established order of which we are the principal part. Yet this revolution is also a revolution of the most sincere flattery. It is a revolution for modernity, where modern progress is defined by our example. It is a revolution often carried out in the name of the ideals that we also share. Of the world today, these are subversive ideals, subversive of the established order of power and of privilege. Political freedom is subversive in Russia, where writers go to jail for a metaphor. Social reform is subversive in northeast Brazil, where a great archbishop is called a communist and his students thrown in jail because he wants land and justice for the peasants. Peasants who now work 12 hours a day in the blazing sun of the cane fields for less than $2 a week. Internal justice is subversive in South Africa, where a Nobel Peace Prize winner is imprisoned because he is black, and a Nobel Prize winning author who is white is forbidden to travel and his political party suppressed because he wishes justice for his black compatriot. For their solution, Einstein was once asked why men could build an atomic bomb and not a structure to control it. He answered that nuclear physics is much easier than politics. And we could add that the tangled complexities of human nature are harder to analyze than are the particles of the atom. We can see this in the Near East today, where ancient animosities have blended with modern frustrations and weapons of war, bringing continual conflict and disorder and devastation. The people of the Arab world are largely illiterate, racked by disease and poverty, without the education and the organization to enrich their harsh desert lands. For decades, even the wealth of their oil fields has gone into the palaces and into the Cadillacs, above all in the armaments and trappings of war. For decades, irresponsible leaders have turned their people's frustration outward, toward the West, and to that tiny outpost of Western culture and ideals, which is the state of Israel. 3 times in 20 years, Israel has had to fight for its very existence, and 3 times her arms and her courage have allowed this tiny nation, with less than the population of Queens, to defeat the armies of nations with total populations of tens of millions.